Hey all, this is Paul from Drums and Rums with the Backbeats Beats Spirits. Oh my God, we're already all over the place. The girls here are already cracking up over that intro that we just did
Oh,
here.
that was great.
So yeah, so why exactly was I showing on the intro? Again, you gotta watch the YouTube video. If you are listening, you gotta go over to YouTube and watch it. But yeah, why was I showing a graphic of a board game? Hopefully, and I don't say the word because then that'll get flagged, and I've been flagged before on YouTube. But yeah, why am I showing a board game? And what is the reference to this board game? Yes, I think it is actually the old school one because I think I looked up and they have different covers and versions of it. But yes, the game of life, and that's what I was referring to. And we're gonna find out more what the reference to this board game is. We're gonna find out a whole lot about our guests here, and we're gonna learn about how I have an idea I'm going to share with them, and maybe I'll have to share it offline, maybe. But let's introduce to the podcast Erika and Tina from Ages 9 to Adult podcast on our podcast series, and shout out to other podcasters. So, how y'all doing tonight? Today, I don't know, whatever.
Good.
Yeah, we are 3 time zones, so it is kind of maybe night for some.
No, we're basically covering the entire country right now between the 3 of us. So
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. It's great to be here.
Yes,
it is.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, say, do you drink on this podcast? Yeah, sure it is. Well, it is always 5 o'clock somewhere, right? And I know right now one of us is on the East Coast, which if you're listening, you probably know who at least one of them is, and one of in Central Time Zone, and the other one's Pacific. So that's 3 bloody time zones here. So hey, let's drink up because it's at least the afternoon here.
All I have at noon in the Midwest is water.
Oh. So I'm still on coffee, but we'll likely have a Bloody Mary soon.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Okay.
You can have Bloody Marys with rum also too, Tina.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
Oh, I know.
Okay. So thanks for coming on the podcast. And we were talking a little bit before we start the show here was how we came and found out, stumbled upon each other or learned about each other's shows. And it was due to our, also very similarly, we had a previous guest on. It was also a Buzzsprout podcast host, and we all are Buzzsprout. So shout out to Buzzsprout there. So yeah. I think, which one is it? I don't have. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Yeah, sound effects and everything, right? Yeah. So
sound effects. This is a high class podcast.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, yeah. See, I even forgot. We got all off because the way you guys came right into the camera, and you guys were busting out laughing about the board game here. I forgot to wait. Hold on, Erika and Tina.
Yeah.
Oh, applause. Yes.
Applause. Yeah.
Yes. There you go. So yeah, no. Thank you for coming. Like I said, we stumbled across each other. You asked a question, and I answered it. And again, it's kind of cool. That's how you find out about other podcasts, listen, or ideas, or come on and be guest on other podcasts, because I think that's definitely is one of the great ways to cross promote is to similar ideas, show ideas to study stories. So yeah,
absolutely.
So okay, so there's a whole lot to cover here. So again, if you guys aren't familiar with Ages 9 to Adult, I suggest you go ahead and download it. It is an awesome podcast where Tina and Erika talk about growing up, listening to music. They were the dynamic duo back in the day. I love the reference to the name A92A. Pete, I screwed it up already.
No, A92A. You got it right.
Okay. And there's a whole reference there. They're going to explain there's a reference to that. And but yeah, so tell us about this podcast.
Where do we start, Tina? This podcast really is a creation of ours, and it really came about because we realized in our mid-40s we are still completely and totally fans and obsessed with 80s metal, and it was sort of like let's do something with this, because I'll tell you, one of the reasons we felt so strongly about it is because a lot of what you hear in terms of rhetoric or discussion or interviews or what have you, when it comes to 80s metal in this genre, is very male focused. You don't really hear much from women fans, women who participated in that culture or in that period of time. And so we did it to kind of give a voice to all of those female fans out there, because there are so many of them, but you just don't ever hear from them. So that's kind of how and why we started it and where it comes from.
Cool. So the podcast has now been out for a year, right? And how did that first podcast start? Was it like everyone was gung ho, or it's like, I guess who hit the hammer to the anvil and said, let's do this?
It's all Erika's fault, actually. And she started bugging me years ago, actually a few years ago, in the before the pandemic Lovato. She was like, we have this love, this passion, let's do a podcast. And I totally blew her off, honestly, for a long time. I was like, yeah. I don't even really listen to podcasts. I don't understand anything about that or what you're saying. Like, she was very persistent. She even flew out. She's like, I want to talk to you about this thing, and I'm going to come out for a visit. And I finally agreed to it in a restaurant here in Los Angeles. It was a very Hollywood moment. I was like, oh, fine, let's just do that. So it really took off from there. And then it was a real, it was an effort on both of our parts to come up with the name, come up with the branding, come up with a topic list, and really like start the logistics of recording and how are we actually going to do this. So it's been a long time coming. We because of the lockdown had to delay a little bit, but we ultimately got it up and running a year ago.
Very cool. So yeah, that pandemic it really changed. Well, we all know it changed everything, and it definitely give a lot of people opportunities to do some things that, whether they're sitting in their house because of the lockdown, and it's definitely good to be persistent, Erika.
Yeah, way to go me. And the name, you asked about the name too. So you showed that board game. The name really comes from the board game Life. And if you listen to Ages 9 to Adult at all, we reference the game Life a lot. It's even in our intro. Tina and I had our own fantasy version of Life when we were kids, and we rockified it. There it is, Ages 9 to Adult. It's right on the box. But we really would play the game, and we turned it into like this metal fantasy world where we would marry the rock stars. So we would pick a name out of a hat of who our husband was going to be. And then we would have children with these people. We'd name them with the husband's last name. We'd have our own jobs that were all very music related. And so we took that game and just made it like our own little fantasy land. And so that's why we talk about the board game Life a lot. And it's also, where the name comes from, Ages 9 to Adult. It's how long we've been on this journey together as friends, but it's also partly because of the board game and just what we saw on the box. Literally, we saw it on the box. And you mentioned also 92 references our high school graduation year. And you said you're also a graduate of 92. So
I know.
This is exciting.
Yes. And I'll tell you this. I know if you're watching the video, I know I look definitely like a graduate 92. So yes, I'll be next week, I'll be 48. But you guys must be very advanced kids growing up, because you must have been definitely, 10 years ahead and graduated in 92. Okay, you guys. Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
you for being the eye candy on the podcast today for me. So.
Well, Tina and I have a 30-year reunion coming up next weekend. Unfortunately, she cannot make it. She's got other commitments out west, but I will be there. So we are, in fact, graduates of 1992. So we've got our reunion coming right up. So
we're we're going back here, and this all started. You both live, so currently you're West Coast and in the Midwest, but you both originally are from Nebraska, right?
Correct.
So okay. So I've always been an East Coast person. I was originally born in New Jersey, moved to Florida, so didn't very far. I have traveled the country though, so at least don't hold that against me. But I guess for me to try to grasp what it's like to not live close to the ocean or something like anywhere where the East Coast does drive a lot of things, but what was it like growing up in Nebraska? Okay, so I mean, the only person I know from Nebraska that, was really Penny from The Big Bang Theory, right? So I'm not quite
Okay.
sure. So I'm not quite sure. So, I mean, what is it like growing up in the 80s in Nebraska?
It's we talk about it a lot. Actually, Johnny Carson was from Nebraska, just so you know. We talk about it a lot.
Was that a dig on me to fail for not doing show prep?
I mean, famous people are from Nebraska.
Well, and Warren Buffett. There is Warren Buffett as well.
All right, we're okay. Podcast is over.
We grew up in a fairly small town, but it was very idyllic and Midwestern and Friday Night Lights, and we were safe. And, we all went to the same school from, elementary school on, really. So you knew all the kids all the way up to graduation. I mean, there's certainly, we were longing for things that we couldn't get there. We were, becoming obsessed with this music and really, yearning for the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles and some excitement like that. But, overall, it was actually a really great childhood.
So I think that's just it, right? Is MTV brought that out, right? Where you just seeing all this happening, and it was great because cable was able to connect, people that aren't, near some of these other LA or New York or et cetera. So, and then obviously, so you talk about what, I guess, who was there? Did you have like this older family member, cousin, brother, sister that kind of got you into rock or how did
I mean, we're both I'm the oldest child. Tina has an older brother, but we certainly came up with this lifestyle ourselves. It was just, we just really in the summer, I think it was the summer of 1987, we really just got obsessed with this music. And of course, 1987, if you know anything about that era, that was really a culmination. It was a good year. There was a lot of, album activity, bands coming up in that particular year that made it so that this music was absolutely everywhere. And Tina and I just became obsessed with it almost immediately. But I think too, the fact that we grew up in the Midwest is probably also a reason why we became so obsessed and why we became such huge fans. I mean, the Midwest in general is, it's just one of the highest concentrations of really small towns that you can find in this country. And when you're in a small town, I mean, you are in some ways looking for escape. You're looking for cultures and places that are foreign and ideas and lifestyles that are totally different from what you're living. And so while we did have a really idyllic childhood, I think we also became obsessed with the music because, not that there was nothing else to do, but you're in a small town. I mean, your opportunities for this sort of thing are very limited. And so we did watch MTV all the time. I mean, Tina and I would spend hours watching MTV and repeating like every video that we loved and recording them and rewinding them. So we just absolutely fell in love with this music, and it really never went away.
And listening to even the recent episode here you did with Guns N' Roses, the anniversary of the Appetite for Destruction, which said, right, that was by far one of the biggest albums released, maybe even in that decade, right? Because that, to your point, that transitioned. There was a transition of, they all had early on hair tees and so forth, but there was that transition to a little bit more harder edge, grungy, and then of course grunge then came, right afterwards. But talking about, very descriptive. Again, if anyone, those that are listening to this podcast are remnants of the 80s and early 90s, hard rock, hair metal. Yes, I'm not, and I'm definitely not busting out pictures of me with long hair. So I'm definitely not putting myself out there. So
wait, did you have long hair?
I did have long hair. Yes.
Wow. Well, you have to post pictures of yourself with long hair.
It's definitely one of those. What we're gonna go. What I already teased you on. What we're gonna do here in a little bit is definitely gonna be one of those. I think I would fall under the probably. I feel like it probably looked better older than I did when I was younger. We're all self-conscious then. So. But yes, I did have long hair, and I grew up in, like I said, in New Jersey and in Sayreville, a couple streets over.
What? You grew up in Sayreville?
Yes, I did.
You left that part out.
Oh, I thought I shared a couple text messages back and forth, or messages so forth. So yeah, so
I didn't realize we were talking about Sayreville. I mean, that's the epicenter of
so
80s metal.
So
I think you did say that, by the way. Yes, that you grew up close to. Didn't you grow up close to like somebody's house or somebody's drummer or something? Or what was your story? Remind us.
Okay, so I know it's not my podcast, so I'm taking your airtime. So, but I mean, I'm not. Yeah, it is my podcast, but I'm saying you're the guest. Yeah, I want to hear your story. Right? So I grew up in Sayreville. I live a few streets over from John Bon Jovi's original house. Behind us was Dave Sabo's mom's house, where he lived. I was there the day MTV came and did the whole big. They gave John Bon Jovi's house away. That was crazy.
God, I remember that.
The mob, that whole scene over there. And in a group, his younger brother Matt, and friends with him growing up because we were close. We were more closer in age. I remember. Here's a story. I remember this one. This is kind of crazy, right? So Matt had called me. Must have been towards the end of the year, Christmas, December, or Thanksgiving. He's like, "Hey, you want to play some street football and two-touch foot, whatever we called it?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "Oh yeah, my brother's home." I said, "Let's play football." I said, "Okay." So I come over his house. So it's like me and him, and John is the quarterback. John's playing football with John Bon Jovi, right? And
that's a great story.
And while we're sitting there, and then who rolls up in a motorcycle? And this is one of those, you're not taking it in when you're this age. Of course, you look back, you're like, this was actually a pretty cool moment. So we're at the street, guy rolls up in a motorcycle. It's Alex Such. He's on the motorcycle,
wow.
So I'm like, all right, 2/5 of Bon Jovi is here, right? So
man, I wish I got to play football with John Bon Jovi. That's a great story.
So, you would be terrible at that. It would have been awkward.
Yeah. She probably wouldn't mind. It would be more. It definitely wouldn't be like. It'd probably be two-hand touching more, right?
Oh yeah. Touch football for
sure.
No.
He's a married man. He's a married man.
True.
Everyone. Yeah. Let's keep it clean.
Oh yeah, that's true. High school sweetheart, right, Dorothea. So
that's right.
So no, I grew up, and same thing was. For me, I did have a little bit more exposure being in the Northeast, and had some older cousins, and I did have the long hair, and go through all those things, Headbangers Ball and MTV, and things like even Friday night video fights. Remember that? Calling in, and it always seemed to be Def Leppard versus Quiet Riot or something.
Yeah. Friday night videos was a big deal because, not everybody back in the day had cable. So not everybody had MTV. Yeah. Tina and I were both fortunate enough to have MTV. But even before, it feels like even before MTV, it probably wasn't. It was after MTV. But like even in like 1984, 1985, 1986, I remember watching Friday night videos. Like that's what you did, was you sat around on Friday nights and watched Friday night videos. And it was all of that music.
Right. So that was kind of my point, frame point reference there, and going through and hard rock, and and I've always kind of evolved a little bit, but always is still in that sweet spot area. That again, I heard some stat, and it could be probably fake news, but it was like, I think when you reach a certain age, and I don't know now I think maybe it is fake news, because I think what comes to mind is 27. There's some age where they say that you've kind of stopped, you've created your capsule on your music that you're listening to, typically, right?
It's probably very true. And, I book shows for a living. It's what I do. I've been managing venues and booking venues for about 17 years. And it's a challenge for me sometimes to like go out and research some of these bands that I book or that we're bringing into our venues. It's like, I don't want to watch these new bands. Like, I just want to sit around and watch like my favorites. And so you're probably right about that. I think you do kind of form your opinions, and that's kind of where they stay.
Right. So, so the podcast, so how do you guys come up with your ideas and your show topics and discussions? You do have some guests on, and that was awesome listening to, the Bullet Boys episode there. Was definitely, and I think I messaged you, I said that was bringing me definitely some memories back to listening to the Bullet Boys. And if I remember, quote, somebody said like they could be like the next Van Halen, just the way that, they had the right tone and sound, and and again, yeah, it makes a difference if the singer is still around. It is really the band, and we all know that. Even as a drummer, look, the drum. Everyone else could be replaced. Ask David Lee Roth, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, we have an ongoing running list of topics that Tina and I add to. Tina actually adds a ton of more topics than I even do, but we just kind of have like a running list. And whenever we come up with an idea or come up with something, we throw it onto the list. And so it's just an ongoing, and we just never run out of ideas. That's how obsessed we are with this music. Like we could probably go for another 5-6 years and never run out of topics, but that's kind of how we come up with ideas.
Yeah. Sorry, you could say, Tina? Sorry.
No, yeah, it's we've got a Google sheet, honestly, and we just kind of dump everything there. We've got some recurring themes in our topics. We like to do countdown lists, best, favorite vocalists and best guitarists and things like that. We also have a book club, the Band of Books book club. So we read books in this genre and then we go Facebook Live and talk about it. Obviously we've started to get some guests. We've had some great ones. Bullet Boys, you mentioned, Tracy Guns, Ricky Rackman. We've done some stuff with the Ladies of Vixen. We've got another guest coming up soon, so we don't want to spoil that in case we jinx it. But yeah, so it's and sometimes the topics are super silly and crazy. I throw stuff out and then I say we're gonna record this one, and Erika hates me, but we get through it and it's fine.
Yeah, we did one. I think my favorite one so far was, you know what I'm gonna say, 80s metal and the weather. And I'm like, I don't even really know where to start, but we came up with 30 minutes worth of content about 80s metal and the weather. So really, maybe that should be the game. Like you just give us a topic and we'll just talk about it. It's like the improv of podcasting.
I like that idea because it definitely, no, you joke, but that could be a really, it's not like we talked earlier. It's not like we don't have enough other stuff going on outside of our podcast to do more stuff and more stuff and more stuff, but just might be something to think about is for somebody do a live stream.
Yeah.
Again,
we would love to.
Yeah,
we would love to.
So and that's great. I went into this very much totally solo. I've had a couple folks come on as co-host and I had an episode, if you go back and listen to, was a high school friend of mine that both had long hair. And, again, we're like, okay, what really defines what a dirtbag is? Somebody, I'm like, I'm not even like, I had glasses, I was like, I'm not even a nerd. I was like, I'm not even all that. I'm a C student probably at best, it's like, so where am I stuck in between? I didn't smoke. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, we did an episode where Craig and I did our top 10. We did 5 and 5, where it was like, where are they now? We split a list of drummers and said, where are they now? Here's this guy, and what is he doing? Tommy Lee. He's did a video with everybody really knows about who he is now, and so or whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
So I don't have so it's always like, I wish I had a little bit more of a co-host or kind of anything. A lot of it is to helping with the ideas and production of the show, which is huge. So, so
well, Tina and I like I said, a lot of this podcast just comes naturally for us. And that was how the podcast really started. I remember, I will never forget the first time we recorded. We were in a studio in Los Angeles, and she and I were sitting across the table from each other, and we had like our notes in front of us. And the guy at the studio was like doing the countdown. He's basically like pointing to us like, you're live. And we were just like looking at each other like deer in headlights. And then from that moment on, we never stopped talking. So we just have like, because we're friends and have been friends for 40 years at this point, we just talk, and I think that comes across too in the podcast is we just have a really easy way of talking with each other, and we flow really easily. Like she can tell when I'm done and then she'll pick up. We just flow really easily, and it's because we have such a long, lifelong friendship. So it's been fun.
And some of these are conversations we've been having for 30 years, like the same.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, our favorite singers, or who we really liked, or that crazy moment when that thing happened, or whatever. We've talked about these things all the time. So for us, those are the more natural episodes where it's just Erika and I, and even more so when she can be in town, when we can be together. It's even better chemistry because we don't step over each other, and then technology cuts people out, the audio cuts out, things like that. So yeah, that's kind of our preference, but geography and life and all that stuff, and then certainly we don't want to turn down the opportunity to have guests on. So but yeah, I think at the core, this is really about Erika and I and our friendship and our perspective on 80s metal, because as she mentioned earlier, the narrative is very male driven out there, and we have stuff to say about it.
Yeah, and that is so yeah. In I guess, and I'll save this question for a little bit later, because going to a lot of shows and putting up with things have changed, right, in cultural and the way people should be treating women, and and especially being a very male dominant show, or there's a reason why you try to bars or try to women drink free, right? Because it attracts the guys, but then you got the guys, and it's like 2 girls in a bar and 10 guys, and it's caveman kind of shit.
Yeah.
So
that's hilarious.
So yes, so what's so continuing on like the future, you guys are just having fun, and it's great. It's not like you guys don't have like any like, hey, here when we get to this point or something, or just runs its course, or just as long as you guys keep vibing and doing your ideas, right?
Well, we actually do have some big plans. She and I have always gone into this with the idea that we wanted it to become something. We didn't just want to do it, in our bedrooms for fun forever. And so we have ideas. She and I both kind of work in the industry. She's more in like the film industry, out in Los Angeles. I am in the music industry and have been for a while. And so we have a lot of contacts. And so when we went into this, this sort of rolled into what we do professionally as well, as part of our day jobs. And so we have a lot of ideas for the podcast, several that we're working on. We've just wrapped up our first year. So year 2, I think, looks like it's going to be pretty exciting. But, we'll have like monthly meetings, and we look at it as like a business. We take it seriously. We research, before our episodes, and we go into it with like more of like a business mindset than maybe other podcasters do. Like you said, I think there are probably 2 different kinds: those that really look at it as a hobby and they're doing it for fun, and that's great. And then there are others that want it to turn into something else or something more. And so that's kind of where Tina and I are at. And I think now that the first year is under our belts, we've got some good experience and kind of know how the whole thing works, and we have a better rapport even on air with each other. And so we're excited about what's to come. We have some things planned. We have some ideas.
Cool. So did you book the Bullet Boys Nebraska then?
Not yet, although they are playing at the Iowa State Fair, which they reminded me in their interviews. So they are playing at the Iowa State Fair on August 14th. I may try to get over to Des Moines and see them, but they're not in Nebraska yet. Okay. One of these days. Okay. One of these days.
No, I there's another YouTube rum review show, Just Drinking, and they're based out of Iowa, so I'm gonna have to let them know. So yeah, so
nice.
Yeah,
nice.
So I'll say, hey, there's somebody like coming here. Yes, I can't remember exactly where in Iowa, but no, I think that's great. Is that if as we both we've talked about, was join in the Buzzsprout community on Facebook and share people sharing ideas and thoughts, is that some approach the, like you said, podcast a little differently and treat it as fun or a business, or some that probably have got a really good idea but may not know how to kind of do the right maneuvers to take it to something else. Or obviously people do podcasts because their topic is based on what they're experts in or experiences, right? So that's really great to be able to leverage, the Rolodex. Oh, geez, did I just aged myself there, right? Rolodex.
The Rolodex.
You knew what you meant. We knew what you meant.
Okay.
We did know
Thank
what
you.
you mean.
Thank you. Yeah, we're no ageisms going on here, right? So
No.
so yeah, no, I like I said, I love it. I just love it's in for my drive to work and even for me is when I was doing the pod, I wasn't, and I've talked about this, probably people get sick of hearing me talk about it, but I didn't really know or get really into podcasts until like I had this idea, it popped in there, and again, it was this concept. And my trouble is my drive to work is like 15 minutes, so I can't even get through my own show to re-listen to it after I've done editing and so forth. But I love, when you got the 30 minutes, or I keep finishing listening to, like I said, the GNR episode there was just keep listening through it because again, talking about your prom dress was inspired by. So yeah, I listen.
Based on Stephanie Seymour's dress in November Rain. Yes, you did listen.
Yes. So you got a little nuggets there for the trivia questions there. To leave people to the next episode, or or maybe that's something, right? You leave your little trivia and then force them to go over to post the answer over on Facebook, or
that's right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely. Do you get a lot of people reaching out to you when through the podcast over on social media or emails? Because I know you give a shout out at the end there.
Yeah, we do. We have like a core group of fans that are really actively engaged with us, that we chat with, that we've even met in person. Erika's met some folks. Yeah, it's good. People are in this world, if they're interested and they like what we're doing, they engage quite a bit. It's nice.
Cool. I definitely have to have you guys back on the happy hour that I do on Thursday nights. I do actually a live thing because I've been always dying. When I started out, was wanting to be live. It's because you got chat, you can be viewing, you can kind of feed off them and all that. And then again, being by myself, I don't have really a producer. I don't, is the technology is, like I said, it's the beast that's going to get you. And I said, I stress out then more over when things don't go right, because now if you're trying to be consistent with publishing, so I said, I'm just going to stay the course and just tape and then put it out there and so forth. But then Thursdays came, or used to be on Fridays, but the live thing came around where it's like, hey, I just want to use it as a vehicle because I still want to perform, and talk about what's coming up. It's a way to promote the podcast, what's coming up, what we did this week, just so it kind of ties people if they hadn't had a chance. And it's kind of grown a life of its own. It's and we have a real good time. The chat kind of starts; they do their thing, and we've got a couple of fun segments. And so definitely, if you guys are interested, we'll definitely can't. This week I'm going out of town for podcast stuff, but definitely for the future. So
yeah, absolutely. We're always up for a happy hour. That sounds great.
All right, so you guys said you're always up for something, right? So let's
we did say that.
Yeah. So all right. So here we go. So this was again, you're reminiscing a lot about the the 80s, and this is a drums podcast, and I guess we got to at least have some drum reference. I am drinking some rum here, Tide's rum, and they're based out of Oregon, and so we are going to do a drum podcast there. So all right, so we've got this thing that we came up with.
I love how it creeps over.
Yeah, it's a creeper, right? All right, so here we go. So this is the Tinder version of 80s Drummers Edition. Are you swiping? All right, so you don't have to answer this question. Have you ever used Tinder?
I have never used Tinder.
No. Okay. No.
Yeah.
I've used other, I'm not going to, I've used other online dating apps, but I have never used Tinder. But what is it? Is it swipe right if you like someone, or what is it? Swipe right? Okay.
All right, Erika, you're not trying to out me out because I am married, so you're not trying to out me out that if I know what is different, right? No.
Yeah. Oh, no. Please don't disclose that on this podcast.
No, well, that's what I Google, right? That's like, I tell people that I
swipe right.
Yeah, like
it's kind of a cultural norm now. Swipe right is like a term that everyone uses. I just wanted to make sure I was clear since I've never used this app. But okay, swipe right.
Yeah, so if you are, maybe I have it backwards then, obviously. So yeah, I think it's swipe left. Swipe left is no, and swipe right is yes.
Right.
I think that's
on the graphic. You have red for no, green for yes.
Yeah. So are you swiping left? No. Are you swiping right? Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's see how it goes. So first up here is, again, these are all drummers from the 80s. Okay, first up. If we can advance the slide, please.
Drum roll.
Yeah, drum roll. Yeah, it should be that wah, wah, wah.
Do you have that sound effect?
Oh, here it comes.
Oh, maybe not.
Technology.
I don't know.
Oh, that was almost Price is Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Come on down. All right, let's see. All right, we're going. Okay, I have to go. Maybe that's what it was. I had to go interactive mode. Okay, first up is Tommy Lee.
Oh,
right.
That's a swipe right.
Swipe right.
No question. Swipe right.
All right, swiping right. It means you're wanting Tommy. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right, so here's what you've got here in 2022 is Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
He is now 59 years old, and for those who don't know, he is the drummer for Motley Crue. He actually met his current wife on the dating app Rhea in 2017.
Really? Now that's a tip. That's a little tidbit I did not know. Interesting.
So it was on. I googled it, so of course it was probably true.
Of course, it's true.
Yeah. And then recently, that was an interesting about him about breaking his ribs, right?
Yeah.
So it's totally bizarre. I said it better be a good story because it's Motley Crue, right? It can't be like you tripped over your Roomba and fell down the stairs, right?
Fell down the stairs because you're old or something. No, can't be that.
So, yep. So, all right. So there's Tommy Lee. Okay. So some of these are, some of the folks that you've talked on your podcast. Mm-hmm. Okay. Next up is we talked a little bit about this band, Robofuso.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to swipe right because I've looked at photos of Robofuso lately, and he seems quite nice. He seems like I would date that. I'm going to do a swipe right.
I agree. I'm also swiping right on Rob.
All right. So swiping right. And here's what you've got here for Robofuso in 2022. Yeah. So Rob is also 50. This is where I started looking at the ages. I'm like, okay, I guess most of these bands were, 10 years or so older.
Yeah, they were older than us. Yep.
Yeah. So there he is with Sebastian Bach. I know, sorry, Sebastian, I knew you were very pretty back in the day, but time has not done you well. Still, yes.
Oh.
And I know you guys talked a lot about the Skid Row, and I talked about, and this is where it is hard to kind of, and I'm guilty of even saying this, and maybe I'll lose my opportunity even getting anybody on the podcast, but it is hard to kind of get back into some of the newer stuff, right? And hey, but they're grinding it, Snake and Bolin and Scotty, and a lot of the changes that you guys had talked about recently on the we've talked about Skid Row recently because I'm actually obsessed with their new lead singer. Nobody will ever replace Sebastian, let's just be clear, but their new lead singer, Eric Gronwald, is a force. I love that dude. So I'm looking for a Skid Row date so I can see him perform live. Yeah. But yes, you're correct. In most cases, it's really tough when the lead singer goes. It makes it hard to get back into the band in the same way. So Skid Row is probably the only exception I can think of off the top of my head. Definitely. And that new song is really, that's a banger.
Yeah.
So it's definitely good. And I did read something somewhere that maybe this is our version of the bell bottoms, for our age, but it's like said that, heavy metal is starting to make a comeback, so I don't know.
Yep.
That is unfortunate. I'll ask you what your thoughts about a lot of these shows, whether bands still have it and, is it worth seeing it? And it's a tough one. All right. So next up here, we've got the drummer for Poison, Ricky Rocket. Look at that hair.
Yeah.
Swipe right.
Swipe right.
All right. So here's what you got in 2022. Ricky Rocket is now 60 years old. So I guess he's got still pretty good
I think
hair.
He looks great, by the way. I think Ricky Rocket looks great.
It looks a little bit like Travis Tritt there, actually.
A little bit.
Travis Tritt.
All right. Next up is Blas Elias. There's another good looking.
Oh, Tina and I love this dude. That's a swipe right for sure.
Swipe right. Yeah. We actually did a whole episode on rockers that are aging well, and he was like one of our top picks. Honestly.
Oh, okay.
He was an award winner. An award winner.
Yeah. All right. So there he is. There, most recent, I guess fairly recent. He's 54. And what was kind of cool was I know he was like a lot of musicians was in I still watch it all the time. Damn, I can't get sucked into this stupid Marky Mark movie, Rockstar, right?
Rockstar.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great soundtrack, and a lot of the rock stars that are in it. And he was in that, right? But Blas was also in the Blue Man Group too in Vegas.
Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So
I have a friend that was just at a Slaughter concert last night, by the way, and he was not performing with Slaughter, which I did not realize that he was not performing with Slaughter currently. I thought he was still in the band. So now, Tina, we're going to have to do some research to see what's going on here, because I thought he was still with the band, but he was not in Kearney, Nebraska last night. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
You made a wrong turn in Albuquerque, I think.
I guess.
All right. So next up is Fred Curry, of course.
I love him.
Look at again this hair, right? This is why we have global warming, folks, because of all this tease and Aquanet.
And Cinderella in particular contributed a great amount of chlorofluorocarbons to the atmosphere. Yes,
they sure did.
So I guess we're swiping.
We're swiping right. I love Fred Cory.
Right.
Yeah, he's great. And I think, like, from all reports, I am not a personal friend of Fred's, but from all reports, he actually is a really fun guy, really nice guy. I think that's kind of a common theme among most of the members of the band Cinderella, but no, he's a swipe right.
All right. He's 54 and not bad. He cleans up nicely there.
He looks great.
It looks like Donny Osmond. I'll take it.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm all about it.
So next up is, again, he started when he was really young. So this photo hopefully isn't like age appropriate, where, because he did start in the band young. So you might know who I'm talking about. But all right. So this was back in the day, Rick Allen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'll swipe right on Rick.
Yeah, I'll swipe right on Rick too. Now I'll have to say, let me just preface this by saying that he was never one that I obsessed over as a kid, but I think he's a super cool dude. And I think after everything he's been through and just his perseverance and the way he still is performing at the top of his game, and, losing an arm, I mean, that's amazing for a drummer to lose an arm and still be at the top of his game the way he is touring stadiums. So he's a swipe right.
And I think a lot of people may not, they know that Rick Allen came back and they put a lot of effort. And I think that really goes to, you talk about bands that nowadays can throw anybody aside, but they really could have really said, hey, sorry, but that really goes back to how bands were as they grew up. They were like brother, that essentially, but they didn't give up on them, which unfortunately today I don't think happens very often. So, all right, so you are swiping right, even though knowing that, yes, that picture does show two, and now it's just
who needs two arms, really? He's fine. But the other thing too about that is, I think because of the modified drum kit after that accident, he really helped develop the sound from Def Leppard moving forward. It's like it's a very, very distinct sound. And
right.
You said earlier, you can kind of replace other people, but you can't replace Rick Allen now at this point. They didn't do it back then, and he's really cool on social media. I follow him.
Yeah, he is.
He's super active, and he's always really excited about what he does, and that's really attractive to us too. That so many of these musicians are still really, really excited about what they're doing, and it's not about the money and the prestige and the luxury. It's really about the fans and the shows. And he's one of those people. I'm super swipe right.
Yeah.
On Rick.
And that's and again, those exact reasons, Tina, is why they are still around and why they're even putting out original music. They could just tour and just be like every other band that might be out there, not putting out new stuff, and and they really believe in their new materials so much, right? So yeah.
I think their new single, Kick. It's called Kick. I like that.
I think so. They're amazing live. They're an amazing live band. Tina and I are going to the stadium tour in Los Angeles at the end of August. So Def Leppard is definitely, they might be the band I'm most looking forward to seeing, even though I'm a massive Motley Crue fan, but I'm very excited to see Def Leppard. They always have such a tight show.
Who is that show with?
So it's a big stadium tour. It's Motley Crue, Poison, Def Leppard, and Joan Jett. It was postponed for
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
Okay.
So.
Maybe that's what I was mixing up, was because for some reason I was thinking in there was Guns N' Roses in that stadium tour. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, because they just played. The Miami show was the second show, and because I think Atlanta, that's when they announced that Tommy had broke his ribs.
Yes.
Somebody came out and they said, and I guess I didn't know that Tommy performed at least a song in Miami, and I'm sure it was probably very contractual that he had to still at least, be there rather than just letting I forgot who's the guy from Ozzy's band. But anyway, but I've heard a lot of people say, God, that was a long show being in an outside arena in Miami in the summer. Okay, so
yeah.
So all right, so up next, as you guys talked a lot about, again, it was just referenced your past episode. There was the Guns N' Roses there. So Steven Adler. So
I would still swipe right on that.
I would too. I think because he's got it. I think he's pulled his act together, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, I'm gonna. I have mad respect.
Okay.
I think that's the thing, Tina and I, what we consider attractive now is probably so much different than it was 30 years ago. But we always talk about this on the podcast that we really like the guys that have gotten their shit together. That's like exciting for us.
Yeah.
So, and I think he's an example of somebody that's been through a lot of hard times and he's pulled it together. And so he's a swipe right because he's kind of gotten his shit together.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, the book was just like, anything around that band and everyone on their own in that band, it was, and especially him, crazy. And the drug, it just was like, wow, and it's unfortunate some of the things they grew up, their own upbringing. So
right.
But yeah, so he was it's good that he also got recognized with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stuff.
Right. Yes. I wish he was still on tour with the band actually, but it's not to be.
Do you know who's touring with Guns N' Roses? Is it still Matt Sorum? No?
I actually don't know the lineup.
Okay.
I don't want to say because I'm not exactly sure who their drummer is currently. I don't think it's Matt Sorum, to be honest. I think it's somebody else, but obviously they've got Axl and Duff and Slash, and then Izzy and Steven have been replaced by other people. Yeah. So
Gilby's still with them, right? Or who's playing rhythm?
Gosh.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I don't know.
I don't know.
All right.
I don't think he is, to be honest with you.
This is where when we're doing our live show, this would be like great phone a friend, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have to phone a friend on this one.
Hold on, calling in, caller. Oh, hey, it's actually Izzy. Right.
That would be cool.
It's not Izzy.
Right,
I do know that much. It is not Izzy.
Oh, remember the big fight? Was it with somebody? Axl was ready to beat somebody up because somebody, was giving Izzy shit. Remember all that back in the MTV days where it was the fight, and was it?
I feel like they were all always fighting. It was just like a beatdown every day. It was so weird.
Somebody pissed somebody off, and
yeah.
So, all right, and then we're gonna wrap it up here as we just mentioned there. Obviously, with my tie-in to the New Jersey is Tico Torres.
Oh
So
he's a swipe right for me.
So
we love Tico.
So yeah, I didn't know how much older Tico was, but I was
gonna say he's older. So I don't know what his exact age is, but he's probably late 60s at this point.
Yeah, 68. Okay, I guess you're not gonna get to see that one. So anyway, he is the picture, but yeah, it said it was 68, and I think he actually does have a house down here in Palm Beach County. So, but I have not stumbled across him yet. But yeah, Tico, come on, man, fellow New Jersey, come on, man.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to get some of these 80s drummers on the show, but
absolutely.
So when you guys were growing up, this is something that, like I said, I mentioned my high school friend Craig Cohen and I when we were supposed to be learning about science, and we'd be sitting in the back of the classroom there, talking about what was if you were building a band, who would be your ultimate band? So if you were able to take a singer, guitar player, drummer, whatever, who would be that? Who would that be for you guys? Have you ever talked? About it?
We just talked about this because we had an episode that we haven't aired yet that's all about listener questions. So it was a Q&A from listeners, and we had a listener that asked that question: if you could build your perfect band, who would it be? I'm trying to remember what my answer was, because I remember I picked Kelly Nichols for the lead singer, because I love, or not Kelly Nichols, Kelly Hansen,
Yeah.
Kelly Hansen for the lead singer, because I love Kelly Hansen. I think I picked Nuno Betancourt for the guitar player. The bass player, I can't remember who I went with, but I know for sure.
Duff?
What's that?
Maybe Duff?
I don't think it was Duff, but I know for sure.
It was Kip Winger.
Oh, yeah, Kip Winger.
Yeah.
Kip Winger. And then I know for sure the drummer was Ricky Rocket. He's one of my favorites.
Come on, she's only 17.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not getting away with that song anymore these days, right?
No.
That doesn't play well, yeah. I can't remember. We sort of answered these in the moment, so it may have changed, but I think I busted out because they were also saying alive or dead. And I think I busted out Janie Lane on vocals.
You did.
Vito Bratta on guitar. I don't know. What did I do?
I think you said Duff, actually, for bass player.
Duff on bass, probably.
I love you guys are throwing names out there that most people, unless you are really into the 80s and metal and hair metal and that wouldn't know these names. So there might be some people listening like, Nuno, what kind of name is that?
Hey, Vito? Tina, by the way, I know who your drummer was.
Who was it?
Johnny D from Brittany Fox.
Oh, right. It was Johnny D of Brittany Fox.
Yeah. He's one of our favorites as well. We have a whole Brittany Fox story. So if you listen to one of our podcast episodes that's specifically about contests, you'll hear the whole Brittany Fox story, but we have a affinity for Brittany Fox for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So that wasn't the worst of it. So now comes the worst. But Tina, you were worried before the podcast. Now here comes the worst of it, right? So you're gonna get the full treatment like every other guest that I have on there, and it's part of what we call our. Okay, so this is it.
Okay.
All right, so I know you. Do any of you play actually an instrument?
No,
not. Nah, we started playing instruments.
we both started playing guitar.
Okay.
We just never really finished.
Never good.
Piano. Yeah, but
I played the clarinet in a middle school band.
Yeah,
okay.
You did.
Okay. So, all right. So in 4 beats or less, first question is, again, we were just talking about it, but so who's your favorite drummer then, right? So you just mentioned Brittany Fox, right, Tina? So, and I think, Erika, you answered the questionnaire, right?
Yeah.
I did, but I can't remember who I put. Tina.
I think you put Tommy.
I think you did. Yeah.
I think both of us. I think for both of us, our favorite drummer is Tommy Lee.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So in 4 beats or less, number 2, who's the one musician you want to meet?
Oh God. Sebastian Bach. Did I make the 4 beats? Probably not. I don't know.
I'm going to say Richie Sambora.
Okay. All right. Nice.
Tina's met Richie. I have not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But my favorite person in the universe is Nikki Sixx, and I have met him, so I couldn't choose him again. I'm going to go with Richie.
Okay. Yeah, and I think there's a sense of. So don't worry, Tina. There's a lot of drummers that say the same thing about it's not for 4 beats, because they ask what is the tempo? Because again, it could be 4 beats at a very slow tempo. So I'll give you a very slow.
Okay. This is a slow tempo,
yeah, slow
4 beat
tempo
kind of show. Yeah,
I'm going to give you
Ballads.
the temp.
We're on the ballads episode.
Oh my God, you said it before, man. I'm starting to think we're starting to, man. I think I see what you guys are talking about now. It's all, it's all. All right, so number 3, 4 beats or less, and I know you just recently just kind of talked about it a little bit there. Which deceased musician would you want to be on the podcast if you broke out the Ouija board?
Janie Lane.
Janie Lane. Okay,
I'll go with that. I can't. Well, okay. Yeah, I'll go with that. We had a whole episode about, I know, I was going to say Jeff LaBar from Cinderella. We had a whole episode actually about musicians that we lost too soon, but I am a big Janie Lane fan. I'll go with Janie.
Yeah, it's a real shame about him. I know, again, a lot of the excess of the 80s and just getting caught up with stuff. And I know he hated the fact that what made them so much money was basically a song for strip clubs, and but I don't know. If you have a hard time accepting some of those things, you like actors, right? They've pigeonholed into one area. But yeah, I saw them 91 with opening for Poison, and I think Trickster.
We probably saw that tour too. Yeah, I think we saw that tour too.
Oh, and Trickster. And Trickster. Yeah. We were there.
Oh my God, give it to me good. All right, last one. Here we go. And I think they were also somewhere in the Northeast too. But anyway, all right. So last one here is, and I'm gonna pause the beat here because I think it's gonna take you a little bit here because I want to hear a real good answer on this here.
Okay.
In 4 beats or more, what's your worst concert experience?
I have 2.
I have at least one that I'm thinking of. Yeah. Well, Erika, why don't you do one? And then
neither one of these have to do with 80s metal, though. I will preface it by saying that I've never had a bad 80s metal concert experience just because I love those bands. So anything they do is fine by me. But Tool, I did not enjoy. James Maynard, the lead singer, I think faced the back of the stage the entire show. I'm like, I don't get what's happening here. I don't understand. So I wasn't a fan of the Tool show. I saw them, I think, at Lollapalooza several years ago. And then the other one is Maroon 5. I saw them and I'm like, I literally like them less live than I do when I hear the recorded stuff. So yeah, I thought it was the most boring live show I had ever seen. So those are my 2 that I was just really unimpressed with.
Okay.
I went straight to the 80s metal genre, but now that because he didn't even clarify that. So I saw Ryan Adams live once.
Oh, I just booked him. Don't tell me he's bad. I just booked him.
Oh, well, he just is not interactive at all with the audience. And he just looks down and just does his thing and blows through all the songs and then walks off. And so to me,
fantastic.
Yeah, it wasn't a great show, but maybe he was going through some shit. Who knows? But I saw a really bad Great White show, to be honest. And it was in the early 2000s. It was at the House of Blues on Sunset. And the sound mix was so terrible and it was so loud that people were like having to leave the show. And the House of Blues is a hardwood floor, so it's just reverberating up your back and you're just uncomfortable and it's standing room only. And it was just kind of a nightmare show. And I'm not sure what happened there, but it was unpleasant. And I was deaf for like 3 days. So
could have been worse. You could have been in that. You could have been in that Hartford show.
No, I mean I know it's kind of like bad to say that it was a bad show.
No, I don't. No, I say that to have a little bit sick, twisted humor, but yeah, no, I don't want to make you feel bad. Just being a little bit.
No, but it was a garbage show. Yeah. Like people were just like, this is not pleasant at all.
And and that's a great point. I want to come back to, but yes, thank you. All right, I'm gonna hold that my thought there because I do want to. Now we wrapped up. Thank you for going through the rapid fire that you all the alums go through, and then includes, things like I don't know again how much you follow on social media. There is Dorothea Taylor. She's the granny drummer. She is anyway, so the whole bunch, bunch of other people. Jim Riley from Rascal Flatts has been on the podcast.
Nice.
And anyway, so you are all part of the alum now there. So you get your shirts there.
We get a shirt.
You get shirts there.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
These are the shirts I give for the this design there for the alums. Now you're now part of the alum, is what I call it.
Wow.
And again, all that as I try to do is like this cool community of eclectic, whether it's drums, rums. We had a couple of filmmakers who did a documentary for the Gorge up in Washington, up in Oregon. Super great documentary. If you get a chance to watch that, but all sorts of people, that at least I always say that I find interesting and entertaining to kind of have on. So there, our tagline where the backbeats meets the spirits there. So there you go, girls.
Nice.
We'll send this out.
This is a high class podcast. We get gifts, Tina.
So. That's really why I need sponsors and advertisers because I give away a lot of shit that's coming out of my own pocket.
Somebody needs to underwrite that.
Yes. So I had a question there. You were talking about the bad shows and and I know sometimes it's really tough to want to watch like in a movie theater, right? Or eating a restaurant or that you get up and walk out of something that whether you want your money back or you're just not wasting your time or you've spent But a lot of these bands and concerts that are coming around on these summer tours, I have a hard time wanting to go see them that I had never seen in the first place, which is unfortunate. I have not seen Motley Crue. I've had opportunities, but just never pulled the trigger. And then in like them coming back around, I'm like, what am I actually paying a lot of that money for? Again, loved Motley Crue growing up. A lot of that stuff. I'm like, am I seeing Vince? I've seen some stuff. Has he got his shit together? Is it the same band? Is it nostalgia?
Yeah.
Look, this music is not very easy to perform.
Yeah.
30 years later either, right? Hitting those high notes. And even Bon Jovi doesn't hit them anymore. And the songs change and they step down music so they can keep the keys either. But yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts about that?
Well, I think one of the big differences that's happening now with all of these groups going out is a lot of them are sober now. And so they're a little bit more focused on the craft. They rehearse, they practice, they're tight, they develop their set list. And of course, a lot of them are doing their greatest hits as well. Some are releasing new music, which you can lose a concert crowd that way as well. If they're not familiar with it, they want to hear all the old hits. But I've been incredibly impressed actually with most of these bands coming out. Vince has had some challenges, but I hear he's pulling it off and doing pretty well. I hear Poison is stealing the show on this tour. Joan Jett, I've seen recently actually, and is incredible every time. Def Leppard's always really tight. I mean, so many of these bands have really, they lived through the worst of it and the most sloppy of it. And yes, maybe your voice, you don't have the same vocal range, but like you said, you make a different vocal choice, you bring your run down, whatever that is. And we're okay with that. And they're much better shows now, actually.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like you have to go into it with the mindset that they're probably not going to sound exactly the same as they did on the album 30 years ago. I mean, you got to just accept it because people's voices change. It's just life. Now, if you're going to a show and Vince, we certainly have seen some footage of Vince that was not great. And you don't want to pay for something like that. I will say, I think he's moved past that. And on this stadium tour, I think he's pulling it off, like Tina said. You don't want to see a crap show, but that's not what I've been experiencing. Just like Tina said, on a lot of what I've seen, I just saw the Sonic Slam tour last month with LA Guns and Tom Kiefer of Cinderella and Faster Pussycat. Faster Pussycat's a great example. Tammy Down recently got sober, like within the last 2 or 3 years, he got sober and he sounded great. You've got vocalists like Tom Kiefer and Phil Lewis that really focus on their vocals and go to great lengths to preserve their voices. And so when you've got vocalists like that, yeah, they might not sound exactly the same, but they sound damn good. And so I'm going to it not only for the nostalgia factor, but because they are great shows. They're performing music that I absolutely love and that I want to see live. You just have to go into it with the right mindset, realizing that it's 30 years later and people are going to sound different.
Yeah, I think that's, you hit the nail on the head there, is you definitely have to have that mindset of, look, you're not seeing the band from the 80s and in whatever condition they may have even been in on a lot of some type of intoxication or whatnot. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of nostalgia there. You're right, Eric, is that you're going to see this show. Yeah, you're probably going to be paying some money for it. But also go into it with the right thought that, okay, I'm going to try my best to enjoy. I know these guys are nearly ready to hit, Medicare, age, which then
well, we all are, right?
I know.
Which I think is like kind of part of the charm of it is we've all kind of aged together.
Yes.
And so what they're going through in terms of vocal changes or body type changes or whatever, we can all relate. We're like, yeah, we're right there with you. So
right.
I feel
all us dad bods out there rocking to,
just do it.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the connection. We had a connection to these bands when we were young, but we've all kind of aged together. And so there's still that connection. Yeah. I'm always going to have a huge fondness for all of these bands for that reason.
Yeah, it's now. So, all right. Okay. No, that's fair. Like I said, I held off wanting to go see and what am I expecting? Now, you mentioned Poison. Now, didn't Bret Michaels have some type of medical issue just recently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's the latest?
I think it was diabetes. He's been a long-term, diabetes.
Right.
He's had it forever. And so that's something he always has to manage and maintain, his health when he's touring. And I think recently he had to miss a show or a couple shows because he had some challenges with that. And I think excessive heat and dehydration and everything else that goes along with managing diabetes just kind of all played a factor. But Brett is unstoppable. Brett, say what you want to about Poison or about Bret Michaels.
He's a workhorse.
Dude is a hustler.
Yeah.
He will perform on his deathbed if it's at all possible. I mean, that guy is a showman for sure. And I think you got to have some respect for that.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people gave them respect for it only because of the way things looked or the songs. But those guys put the time in, and and especially how tight those guys are, and the story that I've always remembered since speaking of Poison, I don't know why it came to mind, was how closely tight they are, where they threw what the hell's his name, is it Jeff Kotzen, or who would replace CC back in the early 90s?
Oh,
it was banging Ricky's wife, or Bobby Doll's wife.
Yeah, who was that? I guess I don't remember who that was. I know the story though.
Yeah. There you go. There's another show ideas, like celebrity, rockers who was banging other rockers. Right. There you go. That sounds like a banging episode. Boom. Oh, there you go. Oh, I had the wrong one. Never mind. I blew it. Anyway. So, all right. Enough of that. Cut it off. All right. I had a boom. Oh, yeah, but anyway. So I appreciate it, Erika and Tina, for coming on. So here's as we wrap things up. What do you want, folks? So here's the shameless plug. Here's the commercial for what you guys are doing. Go ahead and hit us with everything you want to tell us.
Well, I'll start by saying what I hear the most from people when they listen to the podcast and have comments about it is that they love the nostalgia factor. They love the memories it brings back for them individually. They love the music still and are excited to hear people talking about it today in relevant terms. So if you're still a fan of that 80s metal, and especially if you have a childhood buddy, or if you grew up in the Midwest or in a smaller town, I mean, I think our podcast is definitely for you, but our whole goal really is to make this music relevant and to talk about it in the present tense, because as you said toward the beginning of the podcast, I think that this music is going to be coming back. People want more of that rock. They want real instruments and real vocals. And I think a lot of that is going to come back. So if you're a fan of rock music, of 80s metal, definitely tune in and listen. Tina, what do you want to say about it?
Well, I want to tell them where to tune in and listen. So you can follow us and interact with us at our website. It's www.a92a.life. Find us on Instagram at a92a_life and Facebook at a92a. Join our book club, read along with us, engage with us on social media. We'd love to see you guys out there. And this is for friends. It's for lovers of 80s metal. And it's for people our age, 47, 48, Paul, class of 92.
Now remember, you're advanced. You're like Doogie Howser's. No, awesome. Yeah. So definitely check out their podcast, Ages 9 to Adults. A2A.
A9 to A.
Oh, fuck. See, I already.
It's 92.
I keep thinking about it, but again, for some reason, I'm always thinking like ages 2. No, that's Legos. Never mind. So yeah. Yes. I showed the damn box too, didn't I? So yes, that's already. All right, there you go. Fail. Wah wah wah. I should play. Should I play the horns for myself there? Yeah. Wah wah wah. Yeah, so definitely check it out. I did not know, and I think this is, as we were talking about there, about the Buzzsprout Facebook page, learning and growing, and I know there's so many podcasts out there. There's a lot familiar. We will definitely follow you guys. Again, now you're part of the alum, as what I call, again, this crazy circle of folks that promote, tag me on stuff, and then it's, as long as I get tagged, it's super easy for me just to repost it on Instagram or whatnot.
Yes.
I try to post other folks that I follow or have been on the podcast, and I love it. I said it definitely brings, as you mentioned, the nostalgia back to it. Again, thinking about whether the Guns N' Roses episode recently or the interview that was awesome. I think I hit you up right afterwards. I'm like, how'd you get them on? That's awesome. How do I get those? But I love it. And again, it's definitely a place in our time during that late 80s, early 90s, in our high school years from 1988 to 92, right?
That's right.
It's a different time then, and it's great to have the nostalgia. So I love the show. And so definitely, if you're listening to this, check them out on there. We'll post, and when we get ready, this will be dropping, and you're listening to this. This should be Tuesday, July 26th.
Yes.
July 26th. So that'll be the episode 107. You're listening to this. Definitely, if you're listening, also watch the video there, which we had a great fun time in our video there. So definitely for the references. And so follow us, Drums and Rums, on all the socials. Definitely huge, I know, is over on the Apple Podcast. Give us a review, give us a rating. Those, as well as too for their podcast. Those ratings and reviews do mean a lot because that's what people look at. That's how the algorithms work. That's how all that stuff works. You've got to go. If you love it, go ahead and hit the 5-star. If you love it, leave a little comment because that's how advertisers, like I said, or other people find out and learn more about these other great podcasts. If you like what we're doing, then you're going to like what they're doing and then they're doing and so forth. This is how the whole podcast community grows. That's why I wanted to have Tina and Erika on, was because I was like, this is great. I said, I love the show. I said, let's get together. Definitely gives me a nostalgia place. Follow all the YouTube stuff. Subscribe. You guys know the drill. So go ahead and follow us on the podcast. So again, thank you for joining me today, Tina and Erika. I think I have I got a little bit left here. I didn't drink it all during the show, so I behaved myself. So
very good.
Yes. So all right, thank you all for listening to this episode. This is Paul with the Backbeats Meets the Spirits. Cheers, y'all.
Bye. Cheers.